You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, April 15th. Back at it again with my Monday co-host, Weston, and his co-host.
My boss, you mean?
Weston, how you doing, man?
I'm hanging in, Steph. I missed you for the last 2 weeks, so I'm excited and obviously weathering all storms just to be here and talk ball with you this evening. I think it's never too early for the young ones to understand the significance of contract negotiations at the NFL level, especially prior to the draft when you're dealing with the San Francisco 49ers.
Exactly. And as we were saying right before we went live, I think he's ready for his own podcast. So watch out. You have some competition, Weston. But I mean, we got plenty.
2040 something, maybe
40, yeah, at least 2040. But yeah, we got plenty to talk about today. You know, the 49ers are a content machine. We don't even have to do too much work. We just open our mouths and yap because the 49ers do all the work for us. So now we have some updates on Brandon Aiyuk, of course. You know, the talk of much of the offseason. He's expecting a extension with the 49ers. And one of the things that happened over the weekend is, well, you know, if he's following the Deebo Samuel school of negotiations, it was about that time that he unfollowed the 49ers on Instagram. So that's what he did. And I mean, to me, that's not a very big deal. But what I did think was interesting is also this weekend, I believe Ben Albright tweeted this out. He tweeted out an image of a DM or a message that he had gotten from March 14th, so like a month ago, saying Steelers trying to get Aiyuk for Russ. And then the person responding and saying, oh, wow, that would be a huge get, opposite Pickens. And then he posted this weekend with eyeball emojis. So this kind of just got, you know, Twitter into a bit of a tizzy because everyone kind of piggybacked off of this image. This is not even a report. It's just him sharing something. And then we saw 49ers and NFL News 24/7 and John Frischella. I don't know if that I'm saying that correctly. Kind of boarding the let's talk about Brandon Aiyuk train. And one of them said Brandon Aiyuk has requested a trade via their source. And then the other pretty much corroborated that. But what happens this morning, I believe that happened this morning. Man, what a long Monday. Is Ryan Williams, Brandon Aiyuk's agent, tweeting out, you need better sources. So it would appear that Brandon Aiyuk, at least at the moment, has not requested a trade officially from the 49ers. And so we can sleep a little bit better at night.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Can I just jump in, or were you about to ask a question?
Yeah, no, go. Please.
I think you've got to take both sides of this equation with like a grain of salt, right? Like wherever there's smoke, there's fire. We know that BA's agent happens to be good friends with John Lynch, right? So like he clearly wants him to stay and they want those negotiations to happen. And he's playing good cop while BA is playing bad cop in the eyes of fandom and media. But like the stance on this should never change. A, this is lying season. We know that to be a fact. B, like, yeah, I don't care if the Steelers are interested. I don't care if the Broncos are interested. I don't care if the Buffalo Bills are interested. Like, I literally don't care. They should be interested if they're football teams that are serious about winning. And if this guy's got contract negotiation issues going on, you might want to swoop in and see what that's all about. At the end of the day, BA's fate lies in the San Francisco 49ers brass hands. It does not matter if he wants to unfollow them, request a trade, Do whatever it is. Shout out to Miss Deb. Who's better than her? She's literally giving me fatherly advice and motherly advice on this one right here. Miss Deb, we have to work on it. But in any case, like, it's what's different than it was than what how we expected this to unfold. We know the 49ers don't extend pre-draft. They just don't. Like, they just don't. What else did we think was going to come of this? And you knew it was going to get heavier as you get to the pending event of the NFL draft. But I literally don't think anything changes. In fact, I think we got good news, right? You just saw Devonta get his contract, right? I think that's more of the blueprint for where you're going to see BA land. Good. Now there's something that is like tangible that you can really and realistic to start conversations around. I think that's a feather in the 49ers cap, right? Is getting that piece of information out there prior to any draft, whatever. I just don't think anything's changed from now till the day after the Super Bowl when his family was saying, we're out of here, you know?
So this is interesting, right? Obviously, Devontae Smith getting his extension earlier today does impact Brandon Aiyuk in some way. Now, I thought it was interesting what you said is this is good for the 49ers because now it gives them kind of, an idea of what they should be kind of aiming towards or the ballpark of it. And people have different opinions about this, right? Because people seem to think, oh, the 49ers are waiting. Why do they wait so long to get these contract extensions done? Everyone else sets the market or resets the market, and the 49ers probably end up having to pay more at the end. But I think right now, in April, we see this Devontae Smith deal get done. I think it is good for the 49ers because I do think it gives them a bit of an idea of what to work with here. If you look at both of these players' numbers from 2023 that are quite similar, and sure, the internet, Twitter, is in this bit of a debate. Who's better, Devontae Smith or Brandon Aiyuk? It doesn't matter. Brandon Aiyuk is probably going to get a little bit more than Devontae Smith just because Devontae Smith's deals got done before his. And so, this is a good way to gauge what Brandon Aiyuk is going to get. And I think if the 49ers had an opportunity to get Brandon Aiyuk in the same kind of deal, we're looking at $25 million APY, $51 million guaranteed. I would think they'd run to get that deal done, right? And so I think for the 49ers, like you said, this is good. And I do also think they shouldn't wait too long because we also have CeeDee Lamb kind of waiting in the wings for his extension. And we know that one's going to be big. We know the Cowboys probably, going to dish out a good amount of money for that one. So I think if they get Brandon Aiyuk's deal done in between Smith and CeeDee's, I think they're in a good spot to get something that's not too crazy.
The last point, Steph, is like the nail in the coffin in the sense of like you don't want to be going after CD's extension, right? Then you get greedy eyes. You want the big bag, and CeeDee Lamb is more impactful to the Dallas Cowboys offense than Brandon Aiyuk is. It's just a fact, right? Like Devonta is the perfect comparison because that's essentially how he's viewed externally in terms of like the role in the Niners offense, right? So many different, I won't say Debo's AJ Brown, but I'll say, hey, the Niners, they want to run the ball. They focus on a tight end, right? Like he's just one piece of the puzzle, essentially. He's not the piece. Like he's a significant piece. I'm not trying to downplay it, but the reality is he's wants to get paid like a one. What Devonta got feels like one money outside of like the one on his team. And I think that's fair. That's the market, but you definitively don't want to go last. You definitively don't want to go after CD, who's going to get a huge payday. But you know how this league is. It's whoever goes next pays more, period, point blank. Like, doesn't matter the position. Edge rusher, quarterback, wide receiver, D-back. You go last, you pay the most. That's just the way it is.
And not just that, but we've got who's up? Justin Jefferson as well is kind of waiting for an extension too. So I would say
market. Like he's gonna break
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So you definitely want to get Ayuk's deal done before both of those guys. Again, Devontae Smith is a good floor and hopefully doesn't go too much higher than that. But now they have a bit of a framework, to work with. And as the 49ers have been saying, they're going to look to work on this deal after the draft. We're about 10 days away from the draft now, so it's getting close. I don't think the 49ers are going to wait as long as they have with some other deals. And I honestly don't get the sense that Ayuk is going to play hardball as hard as maybe Debo did, because I don't know. I mean, he's been in the building. I know that he's doing this social media stuff, mentioning Mike Tomlin and stirring the pot and unfollowing the 49ers on Instagram. On Instagram, but I mean, I don't think any of that really matters. I still get the sense that Brandon Aiyuk does want to be with the 49ers. I think he's just antsy. I think he just wants it to get done. So as soon as the amount that he would like is presented to him, I think that deal is getting done. But maybe I'm just being optimistic, this time around.
No, I don't think you're being overly optimistic in any case. I think you're spot on in the sense of like he's been there and he's seen his fellow position players and other 49er originals, right, that were drafted by the 49ers and cultivated by the 49ers. They've all been paid. They've all been treated fairly. There are market setters across the board, contractually speaking. So there's nothing to indicate to him that like, dude, we're not going to not pay you. Like, yeah, we're probably going to lowball you because that's prudent. You know what I mean? And
that's what we do.
Yeah, like, and you knew that. Your agent told you that was already going to happen. And I agree. Like, I'm not putting words in Brandon Aiyuk's mouth. I'm going to go ahead and assume he wants to remain a San Francisco 49er to get paid on a highly competitive team. Like, that's the best of both worlds. Like, you're getting paid and you're relevant. That's how you go earn contract number 3 after the big bag contract, right? Is like, hey, I was a contributor on XYZ team. But you know what? I'll put myself in Brandon Aiyuk's camp right now. He's doing everything he's supposed to. I'm not happy. I'm unfollowing you. I'm creating unrest and turmoil because if I sat here and just said, I'll wait and do this on your timeline, that's foolish too. That's foolish on their end, on his end. You know what I mean? So forgive my bald head right now. My kid ganked my hat.
Kids will do that. Kids will do that to you. They'll call you out.
It's a battle here, Steph.
He doesn't even know any words yet, but he's calling you out right now.
Well, he's saying it's BS. They should just pay BA right now. He doesn't know what they're waiting for.
I agree. I completely agree. The kid's already making sense. So that's Brandon Aiyuk. Look, one more question before we move on to the next topic, and this is to bring back a little segment that I do every once in a while, cap or no cap. Is Brandon Aiyuk a Niner after the NFL draft? What say you, Weston? What say you in the comments? Cap or no cap?
So not as hip as I used to be. No cap.
Okay, so yeah. No, this is good. So cap cap is like there's no way. No cap is that's the truth. So it's like cap, you're lying. That's not true. No cap is very much true.
I'm giving you my physical answer. Literally no cap.
There you go.
He'll be a San Francisco 49er.
Yeah, I say the same. Sure, there's teams interested. I don't doubt that the Steelers are interested, has been reported a couple of times now. But I don't think the Steelers are willing to give up pick 20. I think they have pick 20, right? They would probably do it for a second round pick. I don't think the 49ers would take that. So, just all that to say, I think Brandon Aiyuk is a Niner after the NFL draft. That is no cap. All right. So,
and real quick before we jump, and the reason why I think you're right on the there's nothing they're not trading him unless it's like a 1 is because this is not a 3rd round draft choice that is overperformed in his first few years. This was a 1st round draft pick that you traded up for, right? A 1st round draft pick who has lived up to the billing, right? In all facets of the game. He's proved he's an elite route runner. And yes, I'm using the word elite. He's proved that he's a darn good wide receiver. He's a heck of a blocker, and he's a dog and fought through Kyle Shanahan. Like, why would you let that walk out of your building for anything less than a first-round draft pick? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. I think the logic is sound from the 49ers standpoint of, wanting to get a first-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk. While it doesn't make sense for other teams, I get that too. But the 49ers actually want to keep Brandon Aiyuk. So, yes, they are going to set the price pretty high for that reason. But, yeah, now that we're talking about the draft, let's just get into the next topic here, which is, I think, a bit of a doozy. I do care about this draft stuff quite a bit, Weston. And
a little bit.
Just a little bit. So over the weekend, Washington had their spring game. All right, University of Washington had a spring game. John Lynch was in the building. So was offensive line coach Chris Forster.
Yeah.
They were both at Washington's spring game. I thought, that's interesting. The draft is in like less than 2 weeks now. I don't think they're scouting any players that are, in spring game or spring practice, whatever it was, right? It was not pro day. I've seen a lot of people say it was pro day. It was not pro day. So I thought that was really interesting. And this comes after a discussion that was had with my fellow Bully Ball co-host, Jason Aponte, who got the chance to speak with Mel Kiper. Mel Kiper, sometime last week or maybe the week before that, had the 49ers choosing Washington right tackle Roger Rosengarten in his latest mock draft, right? And so Jay got a chance to ask Mel about this. Mel, that sounds so weird. Kiper about this. And basically, the reasoning, there's a lot of connections between these two because, first of all, Rosengarten from Highlands Ranch, Colorado. And so he has been coached by Christian McCaffrey's dad, Ed, in high school. All right. So there's one connection. Then you have Joe Staley, who these days trains prospects leading up to the draft. He was working out with Rosengarten. So there's a second connection right there. And so, Jay specifically asked him, was there more to why you made that pick or what was it? Obviously, Kiper goes into how he likes Rosengarten. Feels like it would be a good fit. And then, obviously mentioned some of the points of some of the connections that, the 49ers and Rosengarten kind of have. And so that made it pretty interesting, right? And he also said, based on things he was hearing, was kind of how he made that choice as well. So that's very interesting. So when I did see that John Lynch and Chris Forster were at Washington just a week, in the same week, really, that we were having these conversations, I was like, wow, there's got to be something to that. And so I actually immediately went to Roger Rosengarten's Instagram to see if he posted anything. And he did. He was at Washington. He posted to his story literally within minutes of that same picture being taken. So he was there. And so I immediately, just started, thinking to myself, is this the 49ers way of meeting Rosengarten without making a huge fuss about it? Because if they brought him in for a 30 visit, everyone would know, it would be widely reported, all these things. But if you do it in Washington, and of course, there were still pictures taken of John Lynch and Forster there, but I feel like it was less reported than maybe like a 30 visit would have been. So I feel like this was a way to kind of keep things under wraps, right? And then so Ben Glassmeyer, then posted this tweet. He said, 49ers GM John Lynch stuck around after practice today, and Roger Rosengarten was warming up for a workout. Coincidence? And this, of course, again, comes with a lot of people kind of reading the tea leaves on the connections between Rosengarten and the 49ers. So I don't think it is a coincidence. And you know what I thought was interesting is that shortly after this, I think by the end of the day, obviously this became a bit of a thing, but by the end of the day, Matt Barrows, tweeted out that according to his source, the 49ers were actually working out a number of players from Washington, right? Which, sounded a little fishy to me because the only name we had seen reported being there was Roger Rosengarten. So to me, I felt like there was some, again, an effort to keep it under wraps. So this is what Matt Barrows said. They looked at several Washington draft prospects. And of course, there are a lot of good prospects out of Washington. Jalen McMillan is another one that, obviously a lot of 49er fans like. Troy Fatanu, another, tackle, another one. So that's all well and dandy, but I just don't think it's true. I think the source was someone from the 49ers who was saying, yeah, like, we worked out a bunch of guys. Why didn't you just go to pro day if you wanted to see all of them? They were not at, they had one of their area scouts at Washington's pro day, which happened earlier in April, I believe, or late March. In any case, I mean, I don't think that any of those other players were there. I also, again, doing my bit of investigative journalism, asked someone who took pictures of the workout who was there. I asked them, were there any other Washington prospects that you saw the 49ers working out, or was it just Rosengarten? He said it was just Rosengarten, and he was one of the last people to leave. The person who took the picture said that. And so, again, I think the 49ers were just trying to keep it under wraps, trying to make it not seem like it was a big deal. Oh, no, we're just working all the Washington guys out. We're not super interested in Rosengarten. Look away. But yeah, it turns out that it was just Rosengarten. So to me, that tells me that there's something there, I think.
Yeah, lot to unpack there. First out, shout out to Mr. Aponte with his conversation with Mel Kiper. I can't tell me how many text messages I got on the side, like, you see Jason right now. So pretty awesome, especially for what we do here. Secondly, listen, it's lying season. How many times you what? But here's my question: if the secrecy is, hey, we weren't meeting with Rosengarten, then for what? Is that your target at 31? Is that a target, somebody that you might eye to move up early into round 2? Because there's a lot of, if you just go by ranking of the prospect by all of the pundits, right? Like, he's not a top 40, top 50 prospect, is he? Like, to my knowledge. So I think a lot of the concerns coming from the 49ers are like, is this it shouldn't be mad that they're prioritizing adding to their offensive line in the first round, right? We've all been screaming for the addition to the offensive line, so should feel good about that. But secondly, where are you prioritizing this guy? Why are you trying to keep it, a secret that you're spending the extra time with him, working him out, having John Lynch in the building? So I think more of the concern, and keep me honest, that more of the, I don't have any concerns over looking at this individual, right? I think it's just a matter about where you envision him being available in terms of where you select. I mean, big guy, long guy, feels like he fits a little bit about what the 49ers want to do. But I feel like my concern is investing this resource, this level of secrecy. If that's going to be your first round guy, can he play left tackle in the NFL too? Because I don't, are we just burning 31 on a right tackle, or whoever 31 is overall, or whoever your first round draft selection is? They better have an opportunity to come in and compete and make an impact right out of the gate, because that's exactly what this roster needs, especially since you've been void of first and second round picks for the last 3 years. You're playing catch up. Guy has to contribute like right out of the gate. Does Rosengarten fit that build? Like, I don't know. I didn't, like it's Fontenot that everybody's watching the tape on, right? That everybody's ranting and raving about because he plays left tackle for a team that played in the college football playoffs, right? Number 1 ranked team in the country. Like, that's who the spotlight's been on. I just have never understand the cloak and dagger and like the being so coy about certain things. Like, I get it. Like, this is the NFL, dude. We have 65 scouts that work for each team. Like, we all know who Roger Rosengarten is. Like, you're not hiding anything. And guess what? Everybody's interested in him because they need offensive talent. It's just a matter of like where do you? My question back to you, Steph, is like, where do you think they have him pegged? Like, as a fan who's consuming this, and as somebody who presents to the media, like, is your intuition telling you that all this secrecy is because they look at him as that bottom of the first round pick?
That's a good question. And that's a great place to take this conversation because Rosengarten has a second to third round draft grade. And for all of the feedback or responses that I saw to the 49ers being interested in Rosengarten from this weekend, a lot of people like the connection, feels like it makes sense for the 49ers. It's a great fit, all those things. But the caveat to almost everyone was, but a little too early at 31. Now, we do know that the 49ers don't care about perceived value of a player. If they have a certain value on that player, that regardless of it being higher than anyone else, they will take that player where they see fit. And they don't care if it's higher than the consensus. So all that to say, maybe they're higher on Rosengarten than, other teams are. Maybe they feel like he's worth it at 31. Maybe they feel like he would be their second round selection. I think that would make more sense, right? For him to be second round. If you feel like you really want him and he might not be there at 63 or 64, whichever pick they have, I don't even remember, then move up from that spot, right? But yeah, I think 31, personally, I think that's too high for him. And yeah, I mean, I've been banging the table for the 49ers to go best player available in the first round, basically. And I think based on the moves they've made to this point in the offseason, I think they've set themselves pretty well to do that comfortably, right? Yeah. And so I think a couple of options for the 49ers. Obviously, they could take an offensive lineman at 31. I think they can also take a wide receiver. The closer we get, honestly, the more I'm thinking it could be a wide receiver. And I would even say maybe a corner, right? Like, I think those are all very real possibilities for the 49ers. And based on who I think will be available, I think they will have a good chance at getting someone, who I like at least. So as long as they don't do the Niner thing and, just grab the guy you least expected, like they sometimes do, right? But yeah, I mean, I'm for anything can happen at 31. I like Rosengarten, just not at 31. I think if they get him with their second round pick, that's a really great pick that a lot of people would also think is a great pick, great fit, all those things. But yeah, maybe go elsewhere. 31.
Yeah, I agree. BPA. I literally think you should be best player available until you get to the 6th, 7th round, and then you're filling like camp bodies and guys that you might like that might just have a shot to crack. But I don't waver from my stance. Whether it's a wide receiver, whether it's a corner, whether it's an edge, whether it's an offensive tackle, a guard, a center, I don't care what the position is in the first round. They just better be given the opportunity to get on the field, right? Oh, that has to be the consideration. I'm not necessarily worried about like first, second, third round grade, because you talk to a lot of the draft pundits out there, they'll tell you most teams only give out 15 to 17 first round grades for players anyway, right? Like, but there's 32 picks in each round. So like there's people that are being drafted in the first round that the majority of teams would say, I had a second round grade on that person, right? Or I had a third round grade on this person. Do you remember when the Dallas Cowboys took Travis Frederick to play center in the first round years ago, right? I mean, what's that got to be 8-9 years ago when they did it? And everybody poo-pooed it because they had a third round grade on it. And then the guy was just like only like one of the best centers in the league for like however many years.
Yeah.
But that validates your point. Some teams are just going to be higher on others because of who they have on their personnel department, who they have on their sidelines, what their scheme looks like. It's all about value to the team. Again, but if Rosengarten's the pick at 31, do I personally love it? No. Is it easily justifiable? Probably, because you have all these conspiracy theory lines that you can draw back to that Kuiper so conveniently pointed out, coached by McCaffrey, blah, 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 blah. Makes it all make sense, which means whether you pick him at 31, or you pick him at 64, or you trade up wherever it is, you got to feel good about the pick because it feels like you have more opportunities to do more homework on a player and who that person is as an individual than you probably do just from like a top 30 visit, right? And a chit chat at the combine and a phone call to an agent or whatever it is. Like you understand who that kid's been since he was 15 years old, right? To who he is now as an adult, right? So I don't know. I feel like I don't love the secrecy. It just always has felt foolish to me. Like there are no secrets in the NFL. Like this is what I'm going to do. Do it better. Stop it. Jump ahead of me. Like whatever it might be in the draft. I've never understood any of that. I think my concern with the situation is if he is the guy at 31, and this is also a team that's already come out and say we love our offensive line. Right? We extended McKinnis. They've said this. So that to me tells me that like if you draft somebody at 31 that plays on the O-line, are they going to get a fair shake to come into camp right away and compete? And if they don't, then you wasted the 31st pick in the draft. That's the way it is.
And that's a great way to look at it. I hope the 49ers look at it the same way. I hope fans look at it the same way if the 49ers don't take an offensive lineman at 31, right? Because I think a lot of fans are like transfixed on the idea it has to be an offensive lineman. We won't accept anything less. This is the biggest need. And, now I think we're kind of turning towards the reality that it could be something other than that. I'm personally comfortable with it being something other than that. Just because, look, I know we're not huge fans of Colton McKivitz. Maybe we're not huge fans of Spencer Burford, but that offensive line, they made it to the Super Bowl. So there isn't too much, I guess, wrong there. At least not something that's going to keep them from getting back to the Super Bowl. It won't be because of that.
What if they went to Washington, little charade here. We're going to work out this guy. We're going to let everybody see us. Take your pictures, take your cameras. But Pittsburgh's going to come in. They're going to trade for Aiyuk. We're going to take 20 overall. We're going to package it with 31 overall. And we're going to incorporate a second round next year. And boom, you're in the top 10 and you're drafting Fontenot. What if?
I know, right? Like it's crazy because like immediately when people saw, John Lynch and Chris Forrester there, a lot of them kind of went towards Fontenot. I mean, it has to be that. And it very well could be. Like, it could be this well-calculated, charade move of, well, we're just trying to get information on Fontenot. And we're interested in Rosengarten, but, we really just want to get a little bit more on Fontenot.
We asked Rosengarten what Fontenot's favorite places are to eat, and we made sure we did all that because they're buddies. Here's what everybody needs to remember. A lot of time goes into the draft. And, Steph, I'm going to call it out. You are my draft resource. You and a few others. I try not to, fall in love with prospects because then my heart is just broken year over year over year, and I find a million reasons to no longer root for this team. But I keep coming back, right? So, but you are my draft source. But the truth is, for the mock drafters, for the Mel Kipers of the world, for all these guys and gals out there, the best of the best get about 20% of the first round picks right. So that means it's like 6 out of 32 are actually correct, right player, right team, right slot. So like, let's not get all up in arms about this. We still got 2 weeks. A lot of things can go. I think Kuiper's just doing what he does best, and he's connecting all the dots.
Yeah. Which, like, we should pay attention to, like, does have some credence.
Of course.
You know, so just something to monitor, I thought was really interesting just for it to be the same week that Jay brought it up. You know, that Kuiper had him in that mock. It was interesting timing. Very, very coincidental. But speaking of the draft, while we're still on the topic, I mean, we've gotten more reports of who the 49ers are bringing in for 30 visits. All right. These are 30 visits that the 49ers and every NFL team are allowed before the draft. All right. So, you know, I'm sure different teams kind of work these different ways. For some teams, like, the majority of their 30 visits are players who they are interested in the first round. For the 49ers, are kind of all over the place. In fact, if you look at some of the names, a lot of them are later in the draft kind of guys, but I will list them out here because we did get a couple of new names that we found out about today. So we've got Florida State linebacker Tatum Bethune. He posted on his Instagram that he was at Santa Clara 49ers facility. That, I'm assuming, was a top 30 visit. He's a seventh round grade to priority free agent. By the way, yeah, added draft grades to the draft sheet. Still in the process of finishing them all up, but most of the names you'll see here do have a draft grade. So, you know, I don't want to hear the question, Steph, where is he gonna go? It's like, it's in the draft sheet now. So please look it up. And then Eric All, tight end out of Iowa. You know, those tight ends out of Iowa never steer you wrong. He has a top 30 with the 49ers. And what had been reported before from Tony Pauline was that he had drawn a lot of interest from the 49ers. So the 30 visit definitely would suggest there is a lot of interest there indeed. Then we got cornerback DeCamarion Richardson out of Mississippi State. He is one of the fastest corners at the combine, and he has a 4th to 5th round grade. Corner, another big need, like we were saying, for the 49ers. So I want to say the majority, actually, of the 49ers 30 visits so far have been towards the secondary. So something to keep an eye on. We also have Ohio State defensive tackle Michael Hall Jr. We have Florida Atlantic defensive lineman Evan Anderson. We have Oregon linebacker Jamal Hill. That will now be the 49ers' second known contact with Jamal Hill. They met with him after his pro day, and of course the 30 visit coming up. The only offensive lineman to this point, Caden Wallace out of Penn State, who he has met with all 32 teams, of course, includes the 49ers, has had real good talks with 49ers. And then Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky, he had a formal with the 49ers at the combine. So there's been a couple of instances, you know, the two have connected to this point. Javon Baker out of UCF. Huge Javon Baker fan I am, and I think he'd be great value in the 4th round. Then you have Oregon defensive lineman Brandon Dorless. He could play inside, he could play outside. I think the 49ers would really love that. He has a 3rd round grade. We've got another Kentucky player, linebacker Trevin Wallace. He has a 3rd round grade. We got Malachi Corley, dubbed the mini Debo. And he has a 30 visit. He has a 2nd to 3rd round grade. Brendan Rice, of course, noted Jerry Rice's son. He also had a formal interview with the 49ers at the combine, and he has a 3rd to 4th round grade. Charles Smith-Wade, he was one of my favorite corners at Senior Bowl. He has a 30 with the 49ers. You could probably get him later in the draft. He has a 6th round grade. He had a formal interview with the 49ers at the combine as well, met with all 32 teams at the Senior Bowl. Marshawn Nealand has a 30 visit. He'll probably go maybe end of first, early second. And Tony Pauline actually earlier today said that the 49ers were hot on his tail or trail, whatever the saying is. But Pauline thinks that, because of the moves the 49ers made in the offseason, free agency, you can cross the 49ers off the list of teams still interested in Nealand. But as we know, the 49ers can't help themselves with defensive linemen, so I wouldn't rule it out. Maybe it's a little unlikely now, but I wouldn't rule it out. And then we also have Utah safety Sione Vaki. Bunch of connections between these two. They have met up to 7 times throughout the pre-draft process, the 49ers and him. They met at the combine. Top 30 visit on deck. I think so the top 30 visits for the 49ers are happening this week. So stay tuned. I mean, I've started following a few prospects on Instagram just to kind of, see where they're at, see what they're up to. That's how I saw the Tatum Bethune news. And so if you guys happen to see anything, tag me, send it to me. I love when you guys tag me and stuff because, sometimes I'm not always on Twitter. Well, despite what you might think, I'm not always on Twitter, guys. So I don't always see everything, although I do a good job of tracking it all down at the end of the day. So, yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. I think we're at about like 16 maybe known top 30 visits. So still a bit more that we can find out in the coming days. So yeah, we'll see what's going on there. Yeah, and Vake is awesome. Yes, Sione Vaki, safety, running back. He's an interesting player from the Bay Area. Grew up a Niners fan. I'm a huge fan of his, and we'll see. We'll see. I think the 49ers could get him later in the draft. So, like I said, there's been a lot of connections between those two. Now,
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask you, like, what are your thoughts on just how the 49ers do their visits? Because if you look at a lot of the draft grades, it's not a lot of like first round grades or even second round grades. A lot of them are like priority free agents, like back end guys. So, do you like that strategy from the 49ers? Is it a bit of a head scratcher? Is it more of the not trying to tip our hand?
I like the strategy, and this is not just me being a homer. I like this strategy because we've always applauded the 49ers of this regime of finding those diamonds in the rough late, right, in the draft. This is probably how they do that, right? Doing a little bit better homework than maybe some of their counterparts on some of these players that, like, if you look at the ones that have the later draft grades on them, they all feel like position of need. What I was saying before, right? Early, you might want to go BPA, who gets in, who doesn't, and then let's fill the gap. So, like, let's not pretend that this team is not littered with impact players that weren't drafted in the 5th round or later. Like, all I got to do is go to our starting quarterback to prove my and in most teams, if they didn't have the last pick of the draft, this guy would have been, an undrafted free agent. Like, that's what it would have been. That was just prudent of taking the quarterback with your last pick, and look how that worked out. I love that it's like, here's the reality. First round draft picks, you got plenty of information in. You could talk to every team. You could talk to every person. Like, you've seen every tape. It's spotlighted. It's cut. The film is that, you know what I mean? But like with these later round guys, like, that's what separates, I feel like, the top teams in the league versus the bottom teams in the league. Bottom teams in the league, they're always littered with first round draft picks. Half of them don't even work out. The teams that compete have contributors from every round in the draft on their roster, like up and down. You do those visits, you want to find somebody with the dog mentality. You want to find somebody that's got your locker room mentality. You want to find somebody, that's how you do it. Another thing I love about the list that you put together is outside of defensive back, and I'm not saying corner or safety because it's a combination of both, and I think we definitely lack depth there, maybe even starting presence in some particular cases. I didn't see any other position like overload, right? that like tips the hat of like, here's our primary. Would I like to see a couple more offensive linemen on there? Yeah, probably. You know what I mean? If like, again, an area that we need to bolster later in the rounds, like you got to find your depth, because guess what? The depth from the years past, 2-3 drafts ago, those guys aren't going to make this route. Like they're not your depth go forward. They're not going to have impact go forward. You've seen enough to know this. We've seen enough to know this based on how you've developed the starting five of this offensive line. But I think it's just prudent strategy to say, like, got it. I can do all the homework I want. My scouts do all the homework on these guys with 1 and 2, first and second round grades. Like, where are we going to hit our home runs? Where I want to find the 1 or 2 people that I'm going to jump up 5 spots to go get, or I'm going to slide back 5 spots because I know they're going to be there, and I'm going to pick up another pick for next year and continue to build this funnel. I think it's just I'll say prudent, because it seems like it has worked since 2017 for this particular regime.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting you say that. Like, I think that is probably part of the reason the 49ers have had success finding some late round gems, because they tend to do quite a bit of homework on those guys, bringing them in on the 30 visits. I mean, there are so many opportunities to meet with the day 1, day 2 guys between the combine, between Senior Bowl. They're everywhere basically. And if you do look at who the 49ers met with at the combine, I would say that's where you'll find the offensive linemen, and where, they tip their cap a little bit. But not too much, because they're not bringing them in for 30 visits. So, that I feel like that's where they did most of their homework at the combine. You saw them have formal interviews, not just informal, but mostly formal interviews with some of the top offensive linemen. You see here some with first round, second round grades. So maybe they don't feel like they need to bring those guys in, and maybe they don't want to bring those guys in because they've already, done their homework on them in other forms. So yeah, I think it's smart by the 49ers. Also add that for priority free agents, these are the undrafted free agents that every team is looking to sign immediately after the draft ends. And those players get to pick where they go. Yep. Having those prior connections with that team, like a top 30 visit where you've already visited the facility, you kind of already know what to expect. That helps the 49ers too, bring in some of those guys who they've already had in the building, who they've already been able to, create those connections with. So I think for a number of reasons, it helps the 49ers. Now, this is put up or shut up time. This is one of the, like, in the next couple years, this draft and next year's draft, maybe one of the most important drafts of the Shanahan-Lynch regime era, So they have to hit on these guys. And so, yeah, I mean, hopefully they do. But yeah, it's been fun as always to go over who the 49ers are interested in, find some trends here and there, things like that. And we're now about, like I said, 10 days away from the draft. So, I'm expecting top 30 visits happening in the next couple days for them. We'll find out a little bit more, but now it's time. I'm locked in, man. Lock the hell in. Well, all right. Weston, I appreciate you coming on today. I know you were on daddy duty with the kiddo there. I appreciate you coming on.
Dogs barking, just chaos stuff. I apologize.
Hey, that's life, man. That's life. It's the beauty of life. And yeah, I appreciate everyone who tuned in as well. I'm sure you guys are lifing as well as you watch this, and appreciate you taking the time out of your day, or while you're washing the dishes, I don't know, doing laundry, whatever you're doing, appreciate your time. So make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, not just mine, but Weston's as well. Weston, give us an update on your channel.
Yeah, Island 49. It's going to be standalone 49er content. Of course, Steph will be guesting. Of course, I announced this like 2 weeks ago, and then we decided, like, hey, we're going to just do a whole bunch of construction on our house and all this fun stuff. So put a little peg in it from availability standpoint, but I'll never miss time with Steph so long as she keeps asking me. But Island 49, Check it out on YouTube. I promise not to disappoint. And this is the hot and heavy time. We're gonna all start to unwrap our new shiny toys. We're gonna overhype them for months, and then we're gonna see what they look like in camp. So I'm excited to do all of that.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, yeah, make sure you guys subscribe to both of our channels. Like I said, audio listeners, leave a review, leave a rating, whatever you want to do. Appreciate it. But for now, have a good rest of your Monday night, folks. Peace.